Jake here for American Trucks, and in this video I'm taking a look at the S&B cold air intake with the oiled cleanable cotton filter, fitting 2019 and newer Ram 2500 and 3500 models with the 6.7 liter Cummins diesel. Now this intake is going to appeal to the Cummins powered Ram owner who's looking for a premium, fully enclosed intake setup. It's going to provide improvements in both power and sound. This is a high quality, no tune required intake that's going to provide you with the benefits of an aftermarket intake with an oiled filter and the consistency and heat mitigation properties of your stock setup. Sort of a best of both worlds type of scenario. Cold air intakes are some of the most popular mods that owners make to their truck, and with good reason. They're typically pretty simple to install, they're usually affordable, and they're effective in improving your driving experience by increasing sound and or power. But not all intakes are created equal. Many on the market are just an open filter in the engine bay, maybe with a heat shield, and while those may be able to pull in a greater volume of air than your stock setup, they are going to be pulling in a lot more hot air from within the engine bay itself. And that's where something like this one from S&B comes in. Now the company claims that this is going to provide a 40% increase in airflow versus your stock intake, and that overall it's 99.89% efficient in its filtering. So let's take a closer look at how they accomplish that. Now the biggest and most obvious feature here is that this is a fully enclosed intake system. Now this is larger than your stock air box. It's pretty darn big actually, and it does pull air from the same location. But there's a difference here. The inlet here has a rubber gasket basically that is designed to have a much tighter seal than your factory one. So this is going to slide right into that stock intake port and it's going to seal up really nicely, meaning that this is going to be much more airtight than stock and thus isn't going to be pulling any hot air in from the engine bay. And that translates to more efficiency and power for you. However, S&B also provides you with another window to pull in air should you need it. So you can just pop this guy out. It's a little more difficult than you might think initially, and you've got another inlet for air. This is going to be a pretty cool setup again, so you've got air coming in from both sides if you want, or if you want to just utilize that stock intake track, you can just pop this right back in. Just like that. We're gonna come back to this box in a few minutes, but by this point you've also no doubt noticed this absolutely enormous air filter. Now this is hefty and it's got a lot of surface area, which is great because you're gonna need a big filter for such a large volume of air coming in, and the Cummins is a big engine, so it needs that. Now this is an oiled filter, unlike stock ones, so you get some additional benefits to go along with that. On the surface of the pleats here, there's a thin layer of oil that's extremely helpful in capturing dust, dirt, and debris. It really just adds an extra layer of protection to keep unwanted things from getting sucked into your intake and engine. And you can reuse this filter, so it's gonna help save you on maintenance costs since you only need to clean and re-oil this occasionally. And if properly maintained, these filters can last a heck of a long time, which is great because I know most of you Cummins owners keep your trucks 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles and so on. So you're not gonna have to worry about replacing your air filter every year or so. And if you drive your truck in dusty or dirty conditions regularly, this will be extremely helpful because you can just pop it out, clean it, and put it back in an hour or so. It doesn't really take all that long. Again, it's a lot cheaper to just clean it and put it back, re-oil it and put it back in than it is to go and buy a whole new setup. Now, while we're on the subject, you also get this cool little window at the top of the box. I told you we were gonna come back to this. This is a piece of plastic, essentially, with a big old rubber seal around the edge. So it's gonna give you a nice view of the filter inside, so you can check on it while it's still in the engine bay, and you don't have to disassemble anything. Now it does just snap in with that rubber seal. It's a little bit difficult to get it in and out, but you do have this tab right here, so you can pull this right out should you need to do that. Now I'm not gonna do it here because I spent a lot of time getting this together to make it look all nice for y'all, but trust me, you can pull this out. Makes it a little bit easier to service the filter. Now over to the intake tube. On this, you'll see you've got your mass airflow sensor and your intake air temperature sensor locations. These are adjusted slightly versus stock here on the intake tube to account for that additional airflow. So they're specifically designed to make sure you don't get a check engine light when you pop this in. Now this is all gonna work very well with stock tunes. It will also work with an aftermarket tune as well should you decide to go that route, but again, it's not required. Now speaking of this intake tube, this is also equally large and it is unbaffled. So between it, the filter, and the airbox, you are gonna get some additional sound here. More intake and turbo noise specifically, possibly your exhaust brake if your truck came so equipped. But that's one of the best parts of the Cummins engines in these trucks. So despite all the nice features that the intake might have here, I think the sound is kind of the best part. As you've no doubt probably figured out, construction here is pretty high quality. The box and the intake tube are made from durable ABS plastic. That stuff is strong, it's lightweight, and has really good heat resistance properties. That clear lid I mentioned earlier is constructed from polycarbonate, and all the seals on here and on the intake tube are all made from really nice premium silicone, so everything is strong and durable. The filter we were talking about is an 8-layer cotton media with some seriously deep pleats to it. So suffice it to say, this is a pretty stout setup that's gonna last you a long time, much like the Cummins engine of your truck, provided of course that you take care of it. And now I think it's a good time for us to talk about the price. Now this whole setup is gonna run you about $400. That's pretty standard for the category. It's not really too expensive. It's not really on the inexpensive side either. Kind of fits right in the middle. You are getting some really nice features here, and even though the intake tube isn't necessarily metal, it isn't the most visually stunning thing you're gonna get necessarily. This is a really high quality item. It's gonna give you good sound, good results, and it's easy to service and put it together. So overall, I think this is a really good value for what you're getting. When it comes to the installation, this one is gonna get a 1 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and it should take you about an hour to get it installed. Overall, this is a pretty simple job to accomplish. Everything you need to get it installed in your Ram is included in the box, including all the clamps and some extra hardware, including new screws for that mass airflow sensor and your intake air temperature sensor too. So with that, let's go ahead and hand things over to one of our AT customers who's gonna walk you through the installation process.
So the tools we use, pretty simple, nothing crazy. Impact driver, once again, you don't need that. You can do it manually, just makes your life a little easier. Ratchet with an extension handle, impact driver extension, also same here. We got that number 20 star key that we used. We have our 11mm ratchet, also the other socket attachment that goes on here. Also can go on the impact driver. Same thing with the 10mm and the 5/16. We had our flat head screwdriver, our impacts, our socket screwdriver, and our wire cutters. So pretty simple. Overall installation took about 60 minutes, no problems. All right, today we're gonna install this S&B cold air intake with an oil cleanable cotton filter into a 2022 Ram Cummins diesel 6.7 liter. As you can see, I have the ladder out. All of you might not need that. This Ram is on a 4.5-inch lift with 37-inch tires. Bought it on AmericanTrucks.com. The item number is HR4877. Prior to installing the cold air intake, it's very important to wait 1 hour after the engine is shut off to not mess with the sensors. Otherwise, you'll get engine lights when you try and restart it after the install of the new system. After that hour, the first step is we're gonna remove the panel push-in rivets that attach the air scoop cover. There's 14 of them in this truck. They look like this here, and you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same going on this side, and then there's 2 back here. Right here and right here. To remove the panel push pin rivets, very simple. Use a little flathead screwdriver. You see this little gap in here, just get it under there. Pry these up gently, just a little. Once you get it up like that, it'll loosen up inside and you can come underneath and pull them out. After having that rivet out, we're gonna go ahead and remove the other 13. Make sure we're saving them for later, as we're gonna need it to reinstall this cover. All right, after we have all those rivets out, we're gonna remove this whole air scoop cover. You come in here and you just kind of bend that out, get that out. Do the same on the other side. And then this whole thing will just lift right off. Next step is we need to remove the bolts that are holding on the factory air scoop. So if you look at the engine here, you're gonna have one bolt here. And then coming this way, you're gonna have another one there. Use a 10mm socket to get those off. Using a 10mm socket, Get a little extension handle here. We're going to remove these factory bolts that are holding on the air scoop. Make sure we don't drop these in the engine. We're going to save them and use them for later. And the other one is over here. All right, next step is we're going to remove the intake air temp sensor and the mass air temp sensor. Those are this and this. It's going to come right off that stock intake assembly. All right, to remove the two sensors, the intake sensor is going to put a little flathead screwdriver back here. There's that little tab. You're going to pop it up and then gently pull that off. Then for the mass air intake sensor, a little more challenging. There's this little black tab cover here. Gently pop that off, make sure not to lose it. A little piece of plastic, set that aside. Then you have this gray piece here. With your finger, you just pop that up and then push it in and gently pull this off. Now this whole harness here is connected to the cold air intake. So you just slide this piece off like that. You just push it to the side. Then we have another one of these plastic rivets here. So we're gonna kind of pop that up. All right, last step before we can take out this stock cold air intake. If you go back here right on the base of the turbo, which is this silver metal where my thumb is, there's this hose clamp here. You're gonna get this screw out. Hard to show you in video, but there's a little screw on that hose clamp. Take that out using a 5/16 socket. You just loosen it enough and we can get that hose clamp off. Can't really show you guys on video. If I get my hand in there, it's just gonna block it. But once again, here's the screw right here. Before removing the air scoop here, there's this little plastic grommet here holding on the electrical cord. There's no place to put this in on the new S&B cold air intake, so we're just gonna cut this like a wire tie. You can either use wire cutters or scissors or anything you kind of have and just take that out. After that, we're just gonna lift this guy up and it'll come right out. Last step to remove the stock cold air intake. Just want to loosen this tube where we release that hose clamp from the turbo down there, and then just use a little muscle power here and just kind of wiggle this and pull it straight up and it'll come right out. All right, once the stock cold air intake is out, we have this nice hole here. You get a good look down there inside that turbo, and you can get ready putting the new one in. All right, back onto the old stock cold air intake. We're gonna remove those two sensors, the IAT and the MAT sensors that we disconnected the wires from before. So we're gonna have to put these two sensor connections into our new S&B cold air intake tube. For that, we're gonna use a number 20 star key. You can do this by hand or use a power driver. We're just gonna take these guys out, make sure, keep those screws handy. Once that screw comes out, that just pops out like that. Same thing for the IAT sensor. And we'll just pop those out and we're ready to put them into our new S&B tube. All right, we have our new S&P cold air intake tube here. We're gonna put our two sensors we removed from the stock tube in, the mass air sensor, and then so we're gonna pop this in. Kind of just twist it a little bit. You'll see it'll end up with this hole in that screw hole. We're gonna put it there. Now with this sensor, it's very important. There's an arrow on here, making sure that arrow points to this sensor. That's the direction of the airflow. That'll just go right in. We're not reusing the screws. We got new screws provided with the kit here. They still use the same 20 star. These are self tappers, so be gentle far with them, nice and slow. Start them halfway, get those in with the 2 there. Kind of drive it home with our driver here. Same thing with the other sensor. Alright, good to go. Alright, next step, we're going to take this silicone coupler here. Get the big end and the small end. The big end is going to go right over here. Kind of stretch it out and get it on there. Then we're going to take one of our hose clamps, put it right on top, and then using, we got our 5/16 socket here on our driver. We're going to just tighten that up. Make sure you get it in that groove there, all the way around before you make it tight. Alright. Tighten that guy up. We're going to put this one on. We're going to tighten it, but not all the way. Just so it's on there, it doesn't fall off somewhere in our engine compartment. That's not too tight, it's not holding anything on. Alright, next we're going to attach this mounting bracket to our air box here. We have our bolts and washers, so the round edge goes to the round edge on here. Kind of stick your bolt through there, just get it on a little bit hand tight. And then we can put the other bolt on there as well. Get those hand tight. Alright, we're going to tighten up these bolts here for this mounting bracket. We're going to use our driver with an 11mm socket. You can also do it by hand with a ratchet as well. Just kind of get in there, hold it tight on this side. And now this box is only plastic, so don't apply too much torque. It's on there solid. Next step, we're just going to put this silicone ring here into this hole in the air box. Just kind of bend it and get it in. Make sure where it says SB is facing to the outside. Make sure there's nothing folded over through there. Same thing on the inside, it's nice and flat and flush. We're going to take our air filter here, put it into the box. There's a hose clamp on there. Make sure we're having access to this screw. We're going to take our tube with our sensors closest to the box. We're going to put this through and then line this filter up so that part with the hose clamp is over this tube. Give it a little spin and look, make sure it's kind of all the way on there. And then we're going to use either a flathead screwdriver or a 5/16 driver to tighten this up. Don't tighten it all the way because we're going to need to adjust where it's sitting and the position of the tube. Just tighten it up enough that it's not going to fall off when we put it back in the truck. Once you got the hose clamp tightened on there, not too tight, just give this a quick spin and make sure that it's on the tube all the way around appropriately. Now we're going to put this silicone scoop seal on there. See this groove on the back, it'll line up in here. Just kind of line up that groove and stretch it over the whole thing. Once it seems to be on there right, just kind of make sure we look around and make sure it's seated good, like it wasn't there. Just check the seal and we're good. This next step is optional. I'm going to choose not to do it. There's this silicone flag. Once again, it has the ring there that will snap in here. You could do this if you like. I'm gonna opt to not do it. That way I'll have additional source of airflow coming in. All right, next we're gonna take these rubber grommets. They came with the kit. We're not reusing the stock ones. We're gonna put these in On this one, the big part is going to face down. Got to push these in, just work them through. Make sure they get all the way through like that. There's also 2 more that are going to go on the bottom. We're going to put the little side in. Again, just work those in. Same thing on this one. All right, we're back to having the stock cold air scoop. This is where the air comes in, and this is where it was going to the stock cold air intake. We're going to take this section off. The S&B new cold air intake is going to connect right here. Very simple. All we need is a flathead screwdriver. Just get in there, and you can just pop these little tabs up, and then flip it over. Do the same thing on this side, and it'll pop right off. This is the piece we're connecting to the new cold air intake. All right, so we have our S&B cold air intake. We're going to use our stock scoop here. So we're just going to take this, line it up over that gasket, and slide it right on. And now we're ready to put it back in the truck. All right, so we're going to get ready to put this cold air intake in. After putting on the scoop, it doesn't sit on there securely since it's not screwed in yet. So even though S&B's instructions say to put it on first, we're going to put this air intake box in and then put the scoop on. So let's make sure our wires are out of the way here. Kind of push those to the side. Grab our cold air intake box. Remember, this tube's still going to spin, so let's not worry about that too much. Kind of just get it in the general direction. And we'll come over here. And you don't want to secure this yet. Just get it almost in place there. You'll see here that the this whole grommet with this seal is going to line up on that pin, but we're not pushing it down yet because I still want to get this scoop on. So I'll grab our factory scoop, and I'll kind of just tilt this up a little and push it in there. This will all be secured once we get it really installed, get it hooked back up to the turbo, and get these pins in. Now that we got this box in, we're going to have to line up these grommets, also the 2 that are on the bottom of this box. What we're going to do is just kind of shimmy it in. You could reach your hand in and just line it up nice. And we push it down, and we're on there tight. We're now going to reconnect the turbo. So we have our tube running from our cold air intake. We're going to utilize this hose clamp here, slide it over here, and then tighten it up using our 5/16 socket or a flathead screwdriver. Can't show you this on video due to the tightness of the space there, but I'll show you the finished product. All right, we got that pipe strap down on our turbo here. Got it nice and tight. Ready to hook back up the electric and finish up this project. We're also going to tighten this hose clamp as well, which is the one we kept loose before when we assembled this. All right, so hooking up the IAP is simple. Literally just plug and play. You have this groove up here with that. Just plugs in. The MAP is a little more complicated. You would like it to go this way, however, it's going to spin this way. There are instructions on S&B's website if you want to flip this clip around. I chose not to. It's not going to damage the wires. It's just going to look a little awkward the way it's pressed that way. So that's going to slide in there. We're going to push that gray back in again. And then we're going to take our little plastic tab cover there. The big part goes down. And we're just going to snap that on. Do this gently once again, because if this drops in the engine, you might never see it again. And there we go. Now we're going to come back in here, and we are going to tighten up this hose strap, make sure it's nice and tight so our air filter doesn't fall off. All right, we're going to get ready to reattach the scoop. So we're going to put in the screw here, and then over here, we're going to line that up. I'm going to start them by hand and then use a 10mm socket. Gonna get these both in by hand before you start tightening to make sure we have it lined up good. And before we tighten it down, we'll just check our seal here. Looks like our turbo is still good and everything's hooked up. We can tighten it down, not too much torque. Remember, this is plastic that we're screwing. And we're good to go. Last time we're gonna put this hood scoop cover back on. So we kind of just lay it on there, and then this piece will go under there. It'll be the same thing on the other side. We have our rivets to go in, which we have from before. Sometimes they separate when you take them out. If they do, it's okay. You just put that piece in, and then you'll see this is square. You just line it up with that. If they're not separate, they should look like this, where this is popped up. Once again, you just push that down and push it in. We're gonna go ahead and do the other 12 of these. There's 10 more up front, and don't forget the 2 in the back for a total of 14. All right, we got that cover back in here. One last step, I'm just gonna put the plexiglass over the filter and we'll start her up. All right, so we have this polycarbonate sheet. Pretty cool. It's going to let us see our filter in action as it's in the truck. So what we're going to do is remove this plastic sheet here. Make sure you got nothing on your surface here. It's going to scratch this up. Remove that. Do the same thing on the other side here. Alright, it says on the instructions to remove over the S&V logo. They might be old instructions because I don't feel anything here. Maybe that's why this blue tape was here instead. It might have been challenging to remove it. This cutout here is going to line up with this tab. Want to put that in last. It'll help us get it in. So we're just going to start in the far corner there, get it working under this. Once again, if you guys aren't in Florida like I am, where it's 100 degrees right now, make sure this silicone's a little warmed up. Just keep it in your house so it's at a good room temperature. Otherwise, it'll be a lot harder to work with. Just kind of keep working it around like that. And then almost to the end here. Get that piece. And then that piece, and we're good to go. Ready to put it in. What's nice about this is it actually snaps in instead of screws in like a lot of air filters. So it'll make it easier for you to get in there and clean your filter and maintain it. Especially if you're in the dirt and the muds as much as I am, you're gonna wanna clean it more than the recommended intervals. All right, so we're just gonna snap this cover over our air filter. Just to remind everyone, this hole here, I know it's hard to see, that was where the optional silicone cover can go. Me, I want more airflow. If you want less airflow and longer intervals before cleaning your filter, you can put that in. I chose not to. I don't mind cleaning the filter more often. Just remember, if you are cleaning the filter, to re-oil it, and don't use any oils that are in aerosol sprays. You could buy that oil on americantruck.com. All right, we're gonna put this in. So this groove here is gonna line up with this. I'm gonna start with the far corner away from the tab and just kind of work it in there again. I'm just gonna work this in here. As I stated earlier, if it's cold out where you live, just keep this in room temperature, all this silicone, before we get it in there. That way it'll be more pliable for you to get it in. Right now it's about 90 degrees here in Florida and I'm having trouble getting it in. So you definitely don't want this cold. All right, looks like we're all snapped in place, ready to start it up and see how it sounds.
That's going to wrap it up here for our review and install of the S&V cold air intake with oiled cleanable cotton filter. fitting 2019 and newer Ram 2500 and 3500s with the 6.7-liter Cummins turbo diesel. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, for all things Ram, be sure to stick with us right here at AmericanTrucks.com.